What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 350 of AskGSM here today for Wednesday, August 12, 2020. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. First and foremost, thank you guys for helping me make it to this point, episode 350 here today. Not doing anything special for it. We went live for episode 200, episode 300, and the 7-year anniversary show last month. So I think episode 200 was now 3 years ago. It feels like yesterday, but that was 3 years ago. Episode 300 was last year, and the 7-year anniversary was obviously this past year, about a month ago. So we will go live at some point again. I really enjoy doing those live shows, and now that I know how to do it with ease, I'm hoping to do another one down the road in the not-too-distant future. So a bit of a heads up on that. In the meantime, though, before we get to the questions and everything else, a few quick things. One, as I mentioned a week ago, and I'm all over the place here, so I apologize, because I lost power a week ago, last Tuesday, didn't get it back until Sunday. I had power in the meantime, for the most part, from Tuesday to Sunday, from just going to various people's houses, including Alexis, which is why she was on the show last week. Hashtag AskGSM, that is. If you want to check that out, definitely do so. Or no, she wasn't on the show, I don't think. She made a quick cameo, but she didn't answer the questions, though. But nonetheless, a few things. WrestleRant.com is now the new nextEraWrestling.net. So for my full reviews, videos even, podcast, interviews, audios, articles, everything. Everything is available right now. It's a one-stop destination for everything that I do. WrestleRant.com. It is practically the same as nextEraWrestling.net, which is still active, by the way. If you still have nextEraWrestling.net saved in your browser as a favorite, whatever, as a place to go to, it still works. It still directs you to WrestleRant.com. So check that out. The rejuvenated, refurbished website that went up about a week ago, went up last Monday before my power went out on Tuesday, and everything went to shit. So check that out right now, WrestleRant.com. You can also check out right now my exclusive interview with WWE NXT star Bronson Reed before he faces Damian Priest tonight on the show. Very much looking forward to that. We had a great interview talking all things his recent rise in NXT. We're talking about his upcoming NXT North American Championship ladder match opportunity at TakeOver 30, wanting a dream match with Samoa Joe, his thoughts on Rhea Ripley's rise, a fellow Aussie, and so much more. That exclusive interview should be up right now as we speak. Not as I speak, but by the time you listen to this, on dailyddt.com. So check that out. And I got at least one more exclusive interview to go. That's coming up tomorrow. The article won't be up until next week, I believe. And then I have another interview coming up next week, and that won't be up in article form, including audio, I think. We're going to try out something new with the audio. They both will be for Bleacher Report. So just a heads up on that. But as I've teased on Twitter in the last few days, I had 3 interviews set as of Monday, and the Bronson Reed one is in the can. It's done. You can read it right now on dailyddt.com. We got 2 more coming, and they are definitely 2 you are not going to want to miss. I will just say that much. Nothing more than that. No more than a simple tease, but you're going to want to check them out. The first one is being revealed tomorrow on Twitter, Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So check that out, please. It's something you're not going to want to miss out on. And the audio of the interview should be included in the article itself. But if it's not, it will be here on WrestleRant Radio at some point in the not-too-distant future. So, again, those interviews coming up on Thursday of this week won't be up in article form until next week. And then the last interview will be happening next week, also up next week as well. So, again, I'll give a reminder on that. Next week probably here on the show. Also, if you guys want to send in questions to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your questions down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your questions in next week's edition. So speaking of the YouTube comments real quick, or the questions rather, we'll start with Emmanuel. Now this was from last week, not really much of a question, more of a observation, informational thing, more of a follow-up on something I talked about last week. So John Ritlin last week here on the show asked me about what Disney movies, Disney animated movies that I thought were underrated, underappreciated, overrated, And for the underappreciated movies, for the underrated Disney animated movies, I said The Emperor's New Groove. I don't know if that's a popular answer. I think a lot of people know that it's a good movie. I don't see it get the love that it deserves, though. I don't know if it's because it's not a part of that, like, Lion King era, or I love Lilo and Stitch. I call that underrated. That has more fanfare than The Emperor's New Groove does, in my opinion. But that came out 20 years ago, so maybe that's why it's not talked about enough. I don't know. I mean, Lion King still is, Aladdin, shit like that, but not The Emperor's New Groove. That was my answer. So Emmanuel, in a YouTube question/comment, had the following to say about my Emperor's New Groove answer from last week. He said, since you've mentioned The Emperor's New Groove, have you ever heard of its production history? To give a short summary, it was originally titled Kingdom of the Sun. Doesn't exactly have the same ring to it. And was essentially the passion project of Roger Allers, who co-directed The Lion King, with the soundtrack being composed by Sting, the musician, not the wrestler, of course. However, various orders by Disney, for example, wanting more comedy, wanting a 2000 release date to fulfill marketing deals, fundamentally changed the movie, and Allers ended up leaving to help on Lilo and Stitch instead. Interestingly, this was covered by The Sweatbox, a documentary film by Sting's wife, as he had it in his contract that production would be documented. Disney had the documentary banned, so if you ever try to watch it, just don't expect to find it on Disney+. I never knew that. I've always loved that movie. I actually saw it in a fucking movie theater when I was 5 years old. For some reason I remember that, but I saw the movie in a movie theater. I still watch it to this day and laugh my ass off. It's a great movie. But I did not know the history behind it, so I thought that was very interesting. Thank you for sharing, Emmanuel, that history lesson on The Emperor's New Groove. So for the Facebook questions from FD from Facebook, his first Facebook question was, and something I would not expect, WWE Raw this week actually beat out all of the major sports happening at the same time in those slots like the NBA and the MLB. My question is, are you surprised with the outcome? What is the reason for Raw performing better this week than the major sports happening at the same time? And do you feel that this is just a one-shot run as we approach the playoffs for the MLB, NHL, and the NBA coming up? Yeah, I was surprised to read that as well. I mean, I would not completely underestimate wrestling. I mean, obviously, Dynamite's ratings have improved. They got a great rating last week, up to 900,000 viewers. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's the highest rating that AEW has done with Dynamite since the pandemic started 6 months ago. Or at this point, 5 months ago? It feels like 6 months, but 5 months ago. That's very impressive. That's really, really cool. So anyway, Raw's ratings have been in the fucking shitter for a long time now. I think the pandemic really just kind of sped up the process. But hearing that it got higher ratings than other sports on TV, there's a few different factors. I don't know if the Raw rating was up from the week before. I think it was, but I don't remember. They did have Orton and KO advertised. They had a few, various things advertised, actually, for that show on Monday. They're coming off the Retribution stuff, the Raw Underground hype, blah, 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 quote unquote. But I don't know if the rating was up significantly, but the fact they did better than other sports is an encouraging sign. It is a positive, encouraging sign. The thing is that those other sports are also being affected by this pandemic. There's no fans. The games might just not be that interesting. I know I still see a lot of people talking about the games and the sports and everything else going on right now. It's just not as popular as it would have been 6 months ago. Now, having sports is better than having no sports. I will say that. I mean, I'm not a sports fan myself, but I can only imagine it's probably better watching these basketball games in the bubble than, watching the Suns go undefeated in the bubble than watching nothing at all. Watching a rerun of a game from 20 years ago. I can only imagine. So there's a couple different factors there, but that should get equal attention as when Raw ratings do shitty, when they do poorly. We always advertise the bad stuff. It's all doom and gloom with WWE. The ratings are in the shitter. Well, we should advertise the good stuff too. Not exactly good for the other sports that you mentioned, but it is good for WWE. Not a big win, but it is worth noting absolutely. So FD's second question. Speaking of sports, with AEW Dynamite on TNT having to move their time slots temporarily to pave way for the NBA playoffs, do you feel that this will hinder their ratings for the next few weeks, and will they be able to get straight back to their normal decent ratings when the NBA season is over and AEW Dynamite will be back to their normal schedule. This is worth noting as well. This really sucks for AEW. WWE has done this countless times. Impact has done it. Almost every promotion that I can think of has had this happen to them at some point or another. When they have to preempt their programming, move it to a different time or a different day or a different channel for 1 week to accommodate whatever's going on, that on that channel, whatever. Usually it's sports. That's happened with WWE multiple times with the fucking dog show, the Westminster Dog Show. Many times over the years with WWE Raw. They've had to move Sci-Fi or ECW to a different channel, like the USA Network for a week, or they've done that with SmackDown before for holiday shit. Whenever you take people out of their element, and it's not just wrestling fans, if you look forward to watching a show every week at the same time, usually you think to yourself, oh, it's Friday at 8, it's SmackDown time. Now, I don't say that all the time just because SmackDown has only been back on Fridays for less than a year now, but for Raw, for example, very rarely is it 8 o'clock on a Monday and I forget that Raw is on. I almost always know that Raw is on, usually because I'm watching it, but even still. With these other shows, if you don't remember that it was moved to a different time or a different day, no matter how much they advertise it, you still may not know or you just might forget. Because people, as many other people have put it, are creatures of habit. So when you change the channel, change the time, change the day, whatever, it's just not the same. So I completely understand that. I completely get it. I think SmackDown, didn't that air on FS1? Like soon after they moved to Fox? Like soon after the draft. I thought they moved to FS1 because there was something going on Fox that day. And the ratings it was like some of the lowest ratings in SmackDown history because it was on a channel that no one really gets in FS1. It's not the same. It's not as widely available as Fox is. So anyway, that really sucks, and it could not come at a worse time because the Dynamite ratings are finally taking off. Not finally taking off, but like they're finally improving. The fact they've been holding steady for the most part is awesome. That's great news because usually in the case of like a WWE, they're constantly declining. But for AEW, they've either really held steady or improved. I mean, they have gone down certain weeks, but by and large, they've done pretty well for themselves, especially during a fucking pandemic. That's very impressive. But when you start building momentum like this, and you throw people for a loop, and again, it's not for a week or two, it's literally 3 different weeks in the next month and a half, until September, like mid-September, including, I think next week's show is not going to be on a Wednesday. They're moving it to Saturday during TakeOver, which is terrible timing. The first hour will be uninterrupted, will be unopposed. The second hour is running head-to-head with the first hour of TakeOver. I don't give a fuck about Dynamite next week to the point where I'm going to be watching it instead of TakeOver. Give me a break. I love Dynamite. I'm not watching that instead of TakeOver. That's just dumb. So again, the ratings will probably decline for at least a week or two. And then when they go back to being on Wednesdays normally, people just may not forget the momentum isn't there anymore. When you get in the habit of doing something and then it's interrupted, you're a lot less likely to go back to doing it once it's interrupted. And once you don't have that, that bing, bang, boom, you're not on that, that flow anymore. And that goes with anything, but specifically when it comes to watching shows and stuff like that. So it's a big blow to AEW. I really hope it doesn't hurt them too much because it does really make me happy to see them having their ratings improve and have them do really well. But to have that interrupted and have the momentum going in the toilet, have the momentum just be completely interrupted really, really sucks. So hopefully they can either maintain the viewers they have, which isn't, again, entirely realistic, if not improve. But I just don't want to see them do worse because they're finally building momentum during the COVID era. And to see that just completely get thrown out the window for reasons that are beyond their control is a real big shame. The next question, also from FD. With New Japan coming up with a great plan to have their show in August, Summer Struggle, to take place in a baseball stadium in Jingu. It's Jingu. I don't know how to pronounce that. Do you feel that WWE should also consider doing their pay-per-views in the next few months at a baseball stadium in the time of a pandemic? That's not a bad idea. Because they've run baseball stadiums before. For the Rumble, the last 2 years have been inside of a baseball stadium. The problem is that obviously it's different with no fans there, but I don't know. Would it be really that much different? Then I guess anything is better than the PC, because the PC, it's a nice fallback plan, but we've seen the same environment, and you're just talking pay-per-views. You're not talking like every single week. For the pay-per-view, sure. Honestly, it's better than what they're doing right now, which is also better than, like, nobody being there. But they got to switch it up once in a while, get creative. AEW, the same exact thing goes for them. A baseball stadium sounds good on paper. I don't know how feasible that is. I don't know how realistic that is. I don't know what would go into that. I don't know how many fans you could have there, if any. New Japan, it's also very different in Japan. You gotta note that as well. It's very different over there compared to where it is right now. We're doing better. I mean, I live in Connecticut, so I can sit here and say, oh, we're doing drastically better. As a country, on the whole, we're really not. There's a lot of states that either aren't wearing the masks, just being fucking dumb, not enforcing the rules, and they went back to normal, quote-unquote, way too quickly, so now states are having to catch up, and there's more cases now than there were a couple of months ago. It's a fucking shit show here in the U.S., because people can't follow a simple rule or two. Completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. So maybe Japan might be able to get away with something like that, because it's better over there, I would assume. They had it a bit longer. New Japan was ahead of the curve with all of this stuff. They canceled all their shows in like mid-February. And only now are they starting to get back to doing shows again. So, again, it might be feasible for them. It doesn't sound like it's feasible for us right now. Maybe at some point down the road, and I would love for that to happen, honestly. Anything is better than the PC. Anything is better than Daly's Place again. Anything is better than the fucking Impact Zone again. I just don't see that happening anytime soon, unfortunately. Let's see. Next question from @Iwagoon91 from Twitter. Do you think that Cassius Ohno had a good run in the WWE both times he was there? They weren't bad runs, so I don't know if I would call them great runs at all. He had a lot of good matches both times. The first time that he was around in the company, I'm going to be completely honest with you, from 2010, 2011, I think he was hired. He was fired in 2013. He was barely there for a cup of coffee. I didn't pay too much attention to his run the first time around. I didn't start watching NXT like the Full Sail version. I saw the first few episodes, fell off of it. I wasn't watching from 2012 to 2013. I got back into it in mid-2013. And by that point, he was kind of on his way out. He wasn't on the show. He came back for a few matches, and then they fired him. But I do remember a couple matches that he had that were actually very good, including one with William Regal from like early 2013, April of 2013. Great match. It's definitely on the network. That's worth checking out. You could probably also find it on like YouTube or fucking Vimeo or whatever. It's a great match. So we got fired in 2013, went back on the indies, did really well for himself, came back in 2017. He was here for 3 years. He had, again, a lot of good matches. I enjoyed the feud with Matt Riddle. He had a couple of good matches with Hideo Itami, and the no disqualification match they had, I remember being very good. He had a very good match with Bobby Roode for the NXT Championship 3 years ago. A lot of good stuff in NXT UK. I enjoyed the matches he had with what's his name? Sid Scala. They had a very good match about a year ago on the show. Great match with Tyler Bate on the show about a year ago. Some good matches with Trent Seven, with Walter, with a number of people on that show. Not Noam Dar. Who am I thinking of? A-Kid, maybe? He had a number of very good matches. The guy they're pushing right now as well. Ilya Dragunov, they had a very good match about a year ago. So, again, I thought he had a very good run for himself, personally, from an in-ring standpoint. I don't know if I would call it this grand success, because at the end of the day, a few different things. One, he never got called up. He was in NXT/NXT UK the entire time, both times. He was on the verge of being called up the first time. Triple H, I guess, isn't really that big of a fan of him, or wasn't originally. I don't know. So, didn't win any titles. Didn't get called up to the main roster. Didn't win many matches, to be honest with you. He was typically positioned as a stepping stone both times he was there. More so the second time. He was brought in to be a player/coach, and they never did much. I've said it here on the show before. They should have reunited the Kings of Wrestling in NXT. Cesaro ain't doing jack shit right now. Yes, he's one half of the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. The guy's been Tag Team Champion, 7 or 8 times? It would have been cool to see one of those reigns be with Cassius Ohno in NXT. God knows they could use more tag teams on that show. So I thought that was a big disappointment. They never reunited those two formally. I think they had like a reunion or two and like a dark match one time a number of years ago, like back in 2012 in NXT. They reunited at a house show about a year or two ago. That went nowhere. It was like a house show gimmick thing. Didn't really, it wasn't permanent at all, obviously. But anyway, so yeah, he had a good run from an in-ring standpoint both times. I can't sit here and say it was this great success because at the end of the day, he put over a lot of people, but he himself was typically positioned as a loser. He didn't win any championships, and he never got called up to the main roster either time. So on the surface, it was kind of a failure, but I enjoyed a lot of the work that he did on both runs that he had on NXT. His second question, isn't it ironic that the WWE Tag Team titles that came in 2002 were created for the SmackDown brand, only for them to now become the Raw Tag Team titles? Yeah, I guess it is a bit ironic. I have noticed that before. But yeah, the WWE Tag Team titles originally, when they started them in 2002, were first relegated to the SmackDown brand. Raw already had the World Tag Team titles, which had a lineage dating back to like 70s, 80s, whatever. I think the 70s, but those World Tag Team titles had been around for a very long time. And then when they unified the championships in 2009, they kept the lineage of the WWE Tag Team titles, which I thought was a mistake, but whatever. So the lineage of the Raw Tag Team titles goes back to 2002. The SmackDown Tag Team titles is kind of like what we have now of what the WWE Tag Team titles were about a decade or so ago. Actually, a decade and a half at this point. That lineage started in 2016. The WWE Tag Team titles are now the Raw Tag Team titles, and they're on Raw. So yeah, that is a bit ironic. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine, and also on YouTube, check out a show, Real Honesty with John Ritland, great content. His first question was, is the surprise roll-up the most devastating maneuver in all of wrestling? Seriously, it seems to be the way to win most matches in WWE. Absolutely, I am so fucking annoyed recently. I've been so fucking annoyed with the abundance of the roll-ups and the small packages. And again, once in a while, when done right, it can be effective. But WWE, actually, no, it's not just WWE. I see it a lot in AEW as well. Because the notion is, if we do roll-ups, then that's a great way to protect talent. But when you do it so often, it loses meaning. That's the problem. WWE does it a lot. AEW might even do it even more. I've seen it a lot there where they're like, let's roll this person up. You're right. It essentially is the most devastating move in all of wrestling if it's winning so many matches. Fuck the Canadian Destroyer. That can't win a match for anyone in 2020. The roll-up is where it's at. The roll-up is the new Canadian Destroyer. So yeah, I just find that completely ridiculous. His second question, how long until they give up on Raw Underground? 3 weeks? 6 weeks? Next week? He asks. I talked about this last week. I said 3 weeks to a month. At this point, 2 to 3 weeks. After seeing it this week, so I am in a different place. I'm not going to sit here and say it's the greatest thing to ever happen at Raw. I am more open to the concept now than I was a week ago. I will say right off the bat, and you may not agree with me, I actually really like the fact they dropped the strippers. I said that last week here on the show. I didn't like that. I thought it was stupid. Liv Morgan's trying to defend it. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a shit. And you might call me PC or you're too sensitive. I just don't think we need that. What's the difference between having strippers on the show and doing bras and panties matches? If your argument is that, women should be allowed to be sexy and they should be allowed to strip their clothes off if they want to, blah, blah, blah. I just don't come to wrestling for that type of thing. I'm not saying, you can have your own thoughts in the stripper profession as a profession, whatever. In WWE, in this setting, I just don't think it's necessary. If you're arguing the women aren't sexy enough by doing what they've already been doing, then I don't know what fucking show you're watching. I think that's completely stupid. I don't think we need strippers on the show. That's their way of showing, this is underground. It's not. It was dumb. I hated the fact that they had those in the first place. I'm glad they got rid of them. Anyway, I thought the concept was done a bit better this week. I loved the Hurt Business stuff a week ago at the end of Raw Underground. This week, though, the stuff with Shayna, Arturo Ruas, however you pronounce his name, he's like a legitimate badass, like a black belt, like, BJJ like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu type stuff. Like, he's really skilled in that area with that type of stuff. Cool to see him on Raw Underground and winning. So, I thought it was well done this week. I'm not in love with the concept by any means, but, it's growing on me. It's growing on me. I'm willing to give it more of a shot, but to answer your question, I could absolutely see it being ditched within the next week or two if it's not developing the ratings that they're looking for. Or if they just get bored of it, or if they run out of ideas with it, I don't know. It has to evolve at some point. It can't just be like these quote-unquote shoot fights, which it's not, with Shayna beating the shit out of these 3 unknown women. It's got to evolve beyond that point. At some certain point, it's got to evolve. For now, though, I was interested. I didn't hate on it this week. I thought it was interesting. Kind of like it. Didn't like it week 1. It grew on me this week. So I'm willing to give it more of a shot. But, it may not last long. If it's not what WWE was hoping for, and, once this thing starts to work, you like it, I like it, the masses like it, that's when they're going to get rid of it. Because whenever something starts to work, that's when they pull the plug on it. So whenever it starts to work is the answer to your question, John. Whenever it starts to work, if at all, that's when they'll pull the plug. If it's not working, expect to have it for the next 6 months to a year. His next question: can AEW fix the booking of their women's division? I know the depth is somewhat lacking, but it seems like they just don't care about them at all. Again, I've gone on this massive rant about the AEW women's division before. It has improved from where it was a year ago. It says absolutely nothing, because they started out with no one, no feuds. Like, Awesome Kong was still around with Brandy Rhodes. They had a shitty thing going. The whole Nightmare Collective shit was terrible. Allie wasn't really doing much. Leva Bates was wrestling more. She's fucking terrible. They had Kylie Ray, and she left. So obviously they're in a much better position now than they were a year ago. Not saying much at all. This division still needs help. It does make me laugh, and listen, I think it's a cool concept. It does make me laugh that tonight on Dynamite, we're getting AEW Tag Team Appreciation Night. If you were to ask me, though, it feels like the tag teams are already appreciated enough. Some more than others, but it feels like we have an abundance of tag team matches on the show every single week, which is fine and fucking dandy. The problem is that the women should be getting that appreciation night. And no, the tag team tournament doesn't count. It's a YouTube exclusive thing. The matches have sucked. They've brought in some decent women. Nicole Savoy was on the show this week. Rachel Ellering. I don't really give a fuck about her, to be honest with you, but she is someone I recognize from NXT. I like Nicole Savoy. They brought back Ivelisse for it. Love that. They brought back Diamante for it. Love that. Veda Scott's there. They have a lot of talent on the show. The matches so far have sucked. But, that being said, there is some talented women a part of the tournament. Tainara Conchi from NXT, she's developing. She's getting better. Cool to see her there. By and large, though, they don't give a shit about their women. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's not like the worst is Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor literally has no women. And I'm not even talking about currently there's no shows. But even before that, though, we're going back a year, half a year before the pandemic started. The women's division was non-existent. They fired the women's champion Kelly Klein after she spoke out against Ring of Honor. Whether she was in the right or wrong is not really my business, but from a booking standpoint, you threw the title right in the fucking trash. The matches sucked. The beautiful people suck. They were big rating poppers, 15 years ago in TNA. In 2020, I don't give a shit about the beautiful people being on my TV. Gonna be completely honest with you. I have no desire to see that whatsoever. So anyway, AEW's women's division is not the worst anywhere right now. I think Ring of Honor takes the cake in that respect. But it definitely needs help. Like, why are they focusing on a pointless tag team tournament when Hikaru Shida has no real direction right now? She faced Penelope Ford in a very good match about a month ago at the, the night 1 or night 2, I think it was night 1 of the Fyter Fest show on Dynamite. And that was it. She's had a match against Diamante since then, but that's it. She has no feud. All Out is in like 3 weeks. I'm sure they're going to throw something random together for that, have a fucking number 1 contenders match on the show. I don't know. The Vicky Guerrero being paired with Nyla, I also don't give a shit about. Nyla, to be completely honest with you, has actually grown on me. I've said this, I think, before. I did not give a shit about her a year ago. I thought she was terrible. She's still not great, but she's getting better, and she's one of the better people there right now. I don't know what that says about the rest of the division, but Allie has literally regressed in the ring. She's fucking terrible at this point. Brandy, I mean, less said about Brandy the better. She's terrible on the mic. She's terrible in the ring. She's one of the worst they have in that entire division. Yet she gets more TV than practically anybody. She fucking sucks. Abaddon, I mean, the list goes on and on. They're all terrible. Abaddon sucks. Brandy sucks. Allie's no good. Nyla Rose is decent. But the partnership with Vicky just, oh my God, just changed the channel. That division needs help, and in the worst way. At noob_n_co 1991, their first question was, who do you think will win the tri-branded Battle Royal on SmackDown? And then they gave a couple of their own picks. So my initial prediction about a week ago when I did my SmackDown review on Saturday here on the channel was Rhea Ripley. Just because, yeah, I know she has something going on right now. She has something going on right now with Mercedes Martinez. But I think it might be a Matt Riddle-esque situation where she's finishing up this feud right now on NXT. She loses to Mercedes, not a takeover, which I would appreciate, but I honestly get the feeling they might give the match away before takeover, like they did with Riddle and Timothy Thatcher. So I feel like they might do the match on an upcoming episode of NXT TV, have Ripley lose, and yeah, I guess the Battle Royals tonight, they're not doing, I mean, I guess they could do Ripley and Mercedes tonight. That'd be dumb without advertising it in advance. But anyway, with Ripley, she could win that Battle Royal on Friday, lose to Martinez, and I guess you don't want to have her lose to Bayley too, so probably not Ripley, but she was my first thought. Tegan Nox I've seen pop up for some people. That would be cool. She's also kind of in the midst of a feud right now with Candice LeRae, so she's not directionless, but she also could lose to Candice and then get called up. I don't think it's time for that yet, but that's also a possibility. Just because they're facing Bayley doesn't mean they're getting called up. For Ripley, though, she should be called up. I mean, come on. I mean, she's done it all in NXT. I talked to her last week. I love Rhea Ripley, but she's already been the NXT Women's Champion. She won War Games. She's headlined a takeover. She's been NXT UK Women's Champion. She's faced and practically beaten everyone, except for Charlotte, and Charlotte's on the main roster, and she's not there right now, but still. SmackDown needs Rhea Ripley. Their women's division needs fresh blood, so Ripley could work. Speaking of SmackDown needing new blood, the Blue brand needing new blood, Mickie James, why the fuck is she on Raw? After Mickie came back on Raw this week, I'm thinking to myself, you know what, honestly, she would make sense. She shouldn't be on Raw, feuding with Natalya and Lana. Who gives a shit? Who fucking cares, dude, about Mickie James versus Natalya in 2020? What is this, 2008? Come on, dude. Come on. Lana's even worse. I don't want to see Mickie on Raw, and it's not a thing of it's not a slight on Mickie. Mickey's great. I'm still a Mickie fan in 2020. I really am. Natalya, I don't give a shit about. Lana, I don't give a shit about anyone. It doesn't matter if Rhea Ripley is feuding with those two. I still won't give a shit because they're fucking terrible. They're terrible. Natalya as a wrestler is decent, but her acting is atrocious, including on Monday's Raw. So anyway, Mickie has said in the past, and I tweeted this out this past week, I got enough response from the tweet where I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. Mickie said a number of years ago, my dream, quote-unquote, opponent if I ever came back to NXT, to WWE, would be with Bayley. And I know Bayley wants to work with Mickie too. I don't think they've ever had a singles match against each other in WWE. Maybe on Main Event or something. As far as I can remember, I don't remember ever seeing a Mickie versus Bayley one-on-one match on WWE TV. That's something I would love to see. And I think that'd be a great match to have. In my freaking chair's squeaking back and forth over here. So I'm not letting out gas. Don't worry. It's just my chair beneath me. This Money in the Bank awesome podcasting chair. But anyway, Mickie would make sense. I don't want to see her feud with Natalya and Lana. And as someone said on Twitter this past week, I really hope it's just like a temporary thing to have Mickie be back in the ring, beat Natalya, and move on. I don't want to see it be drawn out as an actual feud. Who fucking cares, dude? Who cares about Mickie James versus Natalya and Lana in 2020? Honestly, Mickie should have gone to SmackDown. I would love to see Mickie versus Bayley. Bianca's another option. Again, she's kind of busy right now with the whole Montez thing. But, I mean, there's no reason why she can't pull. She wouldn't be pulling double duty because she's not wrestling at SummerSlam. But she could be in her husband's corner at the pay-per-view. But also wrestle for the SmackDown Women's Championship. She shouldn't win. She wouldn't win, I would assume. But that's also an option. So Bayley, Tegan, Mickie, Ripley. They're all my top choices. I really hope it's not someone like Carmella again. Been there, done that. And listen, I like Naomi a lot. They've done the match before, though. I guess you could do it again, but if Naomi's not going to win, then what's the point? That's the problem. I would love to see Naomi back in the title picture, but as long as Bayley is champion, no thanks. She's already challenged and lost to Bayley multiple times, so I don't think that's going to work. Lacey's a loser. Carmella has never has barely been on the show in recent months. Tamina, again, less said about her the better, but yeah, I'm going with either Ripley. There's Tegan. There's Bianca. But ideally for me, Ripley was my number one choice, but now it's Mickie James. Let's see here. Their second question. What are your thoughts on the recent attacks from Retribution? Do you think they're going to be a serious threat or be another failed storyline? I think it's going to be a failed storyline. The Hacker was actually piquing my interest until they dropped it altogether about 3 months ago. Retribution, of the two new gimmicks they introduced on Raw last week, Retribution and Raw Underground, which they obviously did just to boost ratings, Raw Underground, in my opinion, has more promise. Retribution screams Nexus Ninjas, Nexus, fucking Aces and Eights 2.0. And I like Nexus. If Nexus was thrown in the fucking dryer, that would be Retribution. This whole anti-WWE shit, I just don't have faith they're going to pan it out. They're going to reveal it to be anyone big or anyone cool or continue to do it well. Yeah, it's something different. I don't have high hopes, though. I really don't. The Raw Underground thing is different, but it has more promise. The Retribution shit, we've seen it before, and they have not done well by it enough times to give me faith that they're going to do right by it this time around. So, of the two, I assume it will be a failed storyline, but again, I hope they exceed my expectations. At Jeremy8911 from Twitter, do you think Undisputed Era will turn on Adam Cole with Kyle O'Reilly taking over as leader? I hope not. And yeah, it's possible after what they teased with Adam, and I guess we'll find out what happens on NXT tonight. They kind of did something weird with Kyle and Adam recently on the show, maybe a week or two ago. It was probably just last week, where Kyle had come back, and Adam was like yelling at Kyle or like pushing him around a little bit, telling him to kind of get his head in the game and whatever. And then, of course, later on in the show, Adam Cole accidentally cost Kyle and Bobby Fish the NXT Tag Team Championship against Imperium. So, yeah, could they do that? But my problem is with this. Adam Cole's a babyface. I honestly don't mind, just because it's something new, if nothing else. The problem is that I think splitting these guys up before they get to the main roster would be fucking dumb. That's taking all this money and throwing it right out the window. Why would you introduce a new stable like Retribution when you have one already, main roster ready, money ready, and Undisputed Era? That makes no sense to me. And to break them up before they even get to that point, yeah, they've been around for 3 years. It would still be way too soon to be breaking these guys up. That would be dumb. So I really hope that's not what happens. I would put them on SmackDown. SmackDown could use them. I hope they don't turn on him and help Pat McAfee win. That'd be dumb. I guess Adam could win and then they turn on him. I don't know. I just don't really want to see that, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah, Roddy, Adam Cole feud match, whatever would be cool, or Kyle, Adam feud, whatever. I just feel like they're better together than they are apart. Because once they split up, I doubt Undisputed Era remains a thing with Roddy, Kyle, and Fish. They probably go their separate ways too. And Roddy on his own is doomed. And I love the guy. But I think any one of these guys on their own are fucking doomed. They got to be together, and they got to be brought up together too. So I don't really like the idea. Adam Cole's a face I like. The entire faction is a face I like. Hey, maybe, and I think RJ said this before, what if we get, before they leave, like a War Games match, Undisputed Era versus Legado del Fantasma? Why not? Have Legado del Fantasma win, and have that be it. I think that'd be cool. I mean, granted, Undisputed Era is already 1-2 inside War Games, so another loss wouldn't make the record look too good. But hey, you know what? You put over these people on the way out, their baby faces on the way out, they can go to the main roster as heels. I think that makes sense, so why not do it? At E13A, or actually even before Emmanuel's question, at RJ_Marceau, Mr. Marceau's question was, what do you think the end game is for Raw Underground? Also, has the lack of star involvement made this Retribution angle flat? After Raw last night, or on Monday rather, why should anyone care? There's your answer right there. Why should anyone care? My answer for you? You shouldn't. There's no reason to. If they were to go after Randy Orton or Drew McIntyre, which may happen at some point, and Rollins I've seen do interviews saying, fans don't appreciate long-term storytelling. It's not that we don't appreciate long-term storytelling. The problem is that they'll start a story and not fucking finish it. And that has nothing to do with the fans. That has everything to do with Vince McMahon not wanting to see a story through. Not wanting to see it through. That has nothing to do with us. Maybe to an extent. On certain things I agree with them on. Not on that. But anyway. The whole retribution shit I just think is stupid. I thought the angle was interesting last week on SmackDown. But then they showed up on Raw doing nothing of note whatsoever. Oh, the lights flickered. Who gives a shit, dude? Who cares? Until they go after someone that we know. Like when the Nexus showed up, they attacked John Cena. They attacked CM Punk. They attacked Luke Gallows. They attacked Jerry Lawler. They attacked Matt Striker. Some pretty notable names there and some likable people too. Who have Retribution attacked so far? Jesse Camilla? Come on, bro. Like, we gotta see more than that. We gotta see more people get attacked that we actually give a shit about. Because why would I care that they're damaging the ring ropes? It's not my company. Why should I care? And again, maybe they'll build to that, but if you really want to make an impact, that's what you'll do. Not destroy a generator. Who gives a shit? And honestly, again, at the end of the day, I really don't have enough faith that they'll do right by this anyway. So, Raw Underground, what the end game is, I don't know. I would hope to get other people over, but I'm not certain on that either. I mean, to get someone like Shayna over through Raw Underground, I think would be very smart. I think that's what the goal should be with a thing like Raw Underground. But again, I'm not optimistic. Knowing WWE, I'm not overly optimistic. But so far, not going to say so good, but I thought this week's Raw Underground stuff was mildly interesting. I was intrigued. The Retribution shit, not so much. But again, what the end game is really what this should all be about. I don't know. Honestly, I really don't. If they had the Hurt Business come in and destroy everyone on the last night they do it, then that makes sense. But they're clearly continuing it. So I don't know, like having them come in, beat the shit out of people, and then leave, what's the point? Why bother doing that, you know? Why not come back and claim them to be the kings of this underground, you know, this Raw Underground shtick? Nonetheless, I don't want to say I'm enjoying it, but I am keeping my mind open to what Raw Underground might have in store. At Ewan3A, how do you feel about Shrek? It's a great question. I love Shrek. Shrek is love, Shrek is life. But in all seriousness, though, I tweeted this out a couple days ago. Shrek 2 is one of the greatest sequels in cinematic history, and I will see and hear no other opinion than that. I'm not saying it's the greatest. I'm a big Back to the Future 2 fan, so clearly I can't say it's the greatest. And I haven't seen The Godfather 2 yet. I did watch the first one for the first time a couple of months ago. I have not seen the second one yet. But Shrek 2 is an amazing film, even better than the first one in certain respects. They're both just great movies for different reasons. The first one's a great movie. I love the first one. It's a classic. I think, again, I saw it in theaters. I would have been maybe 6 or 7. It came out in 2001, so I would have been like 5 or 6. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing it in theaters, if I'm not mistaken. I had the soundtrack on a CD. Used to blast that shit all the time in elementary school. I love Shrek. The second one, great movie. The third one was decent. I didn't really love it. I thought it was all right. The fourth one, I hardly remember. And I think they're now making a fifth. So, anyway. I love Shrek. I could watch the movie a million times over and just never get bored. It's just a great movie. At Scarlet1, first question, best and worst of the Wednesday Night Wars number 43. And yet again, I completely forgot to write down what happened on both shows last week. God, I don't remember. From NXT, the Priest, Lorcan, and Holland match was good. I remember that. The Imperium Undisputed Era match I was disappointed by just because it felt like an afterthought. I don't really care about the whole Cole McAfee thing. The angle was well done, I will say that. I just don't really care about the feud, to be honest with you. I just don't. I thought the Dakota Kai Rhea Ripley match was easily far and away the best match in the entire show. It was a great match. I really, really enjoyed that. Let's see, what else happened? On Dynamite, I watched NXT first. Dynamite, the 12-man tag team match they did, was actually pretty good. I enjoyed that for what it was worth. I enjoyed that. The Cardona in-ring debut I enjoyed. That was last week as well. I thought that was well done. Cody, he was in the tag team match. What else happened last week? The big swole shit, that's probably in the worst category versus Reba. Who fucking cares? That shit was terrible. What main event of the show? I know MJF did some stuff last week. He was entertaining. Oh, Moxley and Darby Allin I thought was awesome. Yeah, that and the debate were easily the best parts of the show. I actually very much enjoyed Dynamite last week. The debate was great, and Moxley and Allin, who never cease to have great matches together, that was awesome as well. Their second question, did you hear about Chris Jericho hosting Fozzy concerts recently? I did. I saw the whole controversy surrounding Fozzy doing concerts in the first place. It was in South Dakota, and South Dakota recently had like a bunch of morons. This massive like bike rally with like 250,000 people or something completely ridiculous like that. No mask mandate. And hey, maybe people were wearing masks, but the fact they wouldn't relegate that, they wouldn't mandate that is really, really stupid. That's really dumb. So Jericho was on the defense saying, we tested people. I think by this point I can safely say, I'm no fucking doctor, but by August of 2020, I think I could safely say that doing temperature checks is not enough. WWE learned that very quickly a couple of months ago. Doing temperature checks is not enough. You got to legitimately test people for COVID. And he said it was like a 35%, occupancy, attendance, whatever. I just don't think he should be doing it at all, honestly. I mean, I just don't think it's smart. I don't hate the guy saying, what a fucking idiot, blah, blah, blah. Because it sounds like he genuinely cares. He's not saying, fuck the masks, don't wear it, let's rebel, blah, blah, blah. They were trying to be safe. They missed the mark by a little bit. They should have done actual COVID testing. I don't know if you could do that for an event of that scale. I'm not exactly sure. But I don't know if do you go to a concert and make people wear masks the entire time? I guess you do. In this current climate, I guess you do. It's uncomfortable, but you know what? Then just don't fucking go. So I could see why Jericho would be in some hot water right now. They should probably be a bit smarter with their next concert in regards to wearing, making people wear masks, doing less occupancy and shit like that. South Dakota, not that they're in the worst shape right now. It sounds like they don't have a lot of cases because they are so spread out. But then why would you gather together to make your situation worse? That doesn't make any sense to me. Did you hear about Kamala's death? I did. Very unfortunate. I didn't really comment much on it just because I never really had a major connection to Kamala, the character, or whatever. But very sad. I think he was not too old, but he's had a real rough go at it the last couple of years. Specifically with the amputation and shit. It was not looking good for the guy. So it was really sad to see. And a lot of people brought up how WWE should have done more to help him than they did. I don't know the last time that he was on WWE. I thought a couple of years ago, because it feels like I've seen him recently, but maybe that's just because I've seen him on WWE old pay-per-views and shit. Like I was watching WrestleMania 17 a couple of months ago, because he was a part of that gimmick battle royal. I don't know, very sad that he died. Very, very iconic character, drew a lot of money on top with a lot of big names. Should have been bigger than what he was, but a very rough go at it in the last couple of years with the amputation and stuff like that. In WWE, by all accounts, from what I understand, should have done more to save the guy and help the guy than they did. And final question from Scarlet 1. Do you think Kenny Omega's presence on AEW and him not being in the AEW title picture is motivated by him being an executive vice president and not wanting to quote-unquote abuse his position by pushing himself hard? It's funny you mention that because if that is the notion, and listen, I respect that, but if that is the notion, then Cody comes across like a complete dick because he's had this TNT title now for 3 months. And you know what? Honestly, though, he should. Listen, I see it both ways. Cody, the Bucks, Omega should not be champions 24/7 like the NWO were all over WCW TV when they were running the place in the late 90s. But by all accounts, they really haven't been. That's the thing. Even the Bucks don't feel as special as they should. So it's not like they're over pushing themselves. They haven't won the tag team titles yet. Cody's the AEW TNT champion because it makes sense. He's the perfect person for that spot to be doing an open challenge. So honestly, I have no issue with that. I do have an issue with Kenny Omega not being in the title picture. Because if that is his mindset, Cody apparently didn't get the memo. But with Kenny, he has said before, he's publicly said on Twitter that it's not about me so much anymore, it's about furthering the next generation. I sure wish Goldberg felt the same way. coming back at 50 fucking something years old and winning the Universal Championship. Kenny is not an old guy. I don't even think he's 40 yet. I think he's like in his late 30s. Not exactly a young up-and-comer, but he still has a lot left to offer than just putting other people over. And again, he's been champion now for 7 months with Adam Page. So it's not like he's been on Dark Wrestling Losers for the last year. He has been in a pretty prominent role, and I feel like they would have split up him and Page a lot earlier had the pandemic not happened, to be completely honest with you. So that may not be his fault. It's not really anyone's fault. It's a matter of telling the right story, and they got to move on from the Page and Omega thing at some point. And they have a great thing going, but they got to split them up, give other teams a run of the titles. They've been a great team, but in my opinion, it's time to move on. But yeah, I don't agree. I mean, again, it's him. It's him not booking himself. Not booking himself, but it's a matter of, with Kenny, I think he should be taken more seriously as a main event guy in that show. He is good enough at this point in time to still be a top name for that company. So if the notion is, I'm a VP, I don't want to push myself too hard, then you're just wasting the last couple of good years you have left. Not couple, like I could wrestle for the next 10 years if you wanted to, but like, you're wasting precious time. And again, that's very selfless of him, but Jericho's been the same way. The guy put over fucking Fandango at WrestleMania 7 years ago. But he was also the AEW World Champion for a number of months because it made sense. Because he was the right guy for the job. So anyway, what was I saying? But yeah, with Omega, he should be back in the title picture at some point, and honestly, I hope he is. If I'm booking this shit, and I've seen other people say the same thing, I would have Omega beat Moxley for the championship. Have them drop the tag titles to FDR in a triple threat tag team match at All Out. But then do Omega Moxley at Full Gear, 1 year removed from their first no DQ unsanctioned match, whatever. Omega loses, or rather wins the championship. Moxley finally loses. And Omega can finally go full-fledged heel and trace it back to when he lost to Moxley a year ago. I mean, you can even go back further than that and say that he lost to Jericho at... And actually, he lost a lot of fucking matches. Because he lost to Pac, too. Wait a second. He won at Revolution. Wow, he went 0-3 on pay-per-view for AEW in 2019. Yeah, I guess he won at Fyter Fest and Fight for the Fallen, but who gives a fuck about those shows? For the main pay-per-views, though, he lost a lot. So he could trace it back to that and say, hey, you know what, I was a loser before I went heel and blah, blah, blah. And Adam Page was holding me back. That's what I would do. And you could have Adam Page be the one to take that belt from Kenny Omega. I know it sounds a lot like, just pass the belt around between the elite guys, but it makes sense. If the story makes sense and these people are over enough to justify doing it, then why not? That's my opinion. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for episode 350 here today of #AskGSM for Wednesday, August 12th, 2020. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the show. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. And, yeah, that's about it. Finally, though, before I forget a few things, check out WrestleRant.com for all the latest articles, reviews, videos, podcasts, and whatnot. Check out my exclusive interview right now before NXT tonight with Bronson Reed before he faces Damian Priest tonight on the show. Great interview there, up right now on the website. And if you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And be sure to drop your comment down below, your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Until next time, guys, I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll catch your ass down the road.